Hello friends, Lee C. Camp here. Today we're pleased to be sharing a new show called The Subtext. As many of you may know, I don't have a cell phone and I most certainly do not keep up with the headlines of the moment. Well, that's not quite true. I mean, I read the New York Times and I read The Economist and I listen to public radio. But so far as what's trending and what's happening in pop culture, I am a great ignorant mess and, quite honestly, pretty happy about that. Many, however, on the No Small Endeavor team have pointed out that pop culture trends do, in fact, mean something about us as a people, as a community, as a society. There's often something underneath it all that can point us in very important directions, in some cases for our flourishing, and in other cases for the diminishment, the subversion even, of our flourishing. So we've created the subtext, beneath the headlines, beyond the obvious. I'm joined by a new co-host, Savannah Locke. Savannah wrote and co-hosted the popular podcast All the Buried Women. She's a writer, social commentator, singer-songwriter, and is quickly becoming a good friend. You can find her work or follow her at Savannah_Locke. That's L-O-C-K-E, Savannah_Locke. It's been great fun so far. Savannah brings in headlines, trending shows, or some popping pop culture specimen, and we dig in looking for signs of the gracious work of God in the world, or sometimes we'll do a bit of critique of trends that might be trending away from the beautiful, true, or good. Might we even say trending towards death? That's enough telling you about it. Here's the episode. These episodes will appear in your No Small Endeavor feed every Wednesday. If you like what you hear, go ahead and follow at The Subtext Show on socials. Enjoy.
Lee, welcome back to your own show.
Savannah, welcome to our show.
This is how I want to
It's
start.
our show.
Welcome to our show.
I will not be unwittingly sucked into some patriarchal sort of narrative.
This is why we are perfect for this show together. How's it going? What are the vibes at the moment?
Good vibes.
Yeah?
Good vibes, yeah. Yeah. Life is full and adventuresome and, yeah, good.
I'm loving your shirt. Did you say you stole it from your son?
No, that's my boots that my son was going to throw away that I saved from Goodwill. And I probably got this shirt from Goodwill, I don't know, a long time ago, yeah.
I'm a big Goodwill gal as well.
Yeah. I used to be. I don't go there much anymore, but yeah, that was our staple for a long time.
How lucky that you wear the same shoe size as your son.
It's very fortunate, yes.
Because you can just take whatever.
Yeah, or they can as well.
That's so true as well.
Yeah. The big issue for me and my sons were my socks. They would take my socks so endlessly, and it drove me to profanity.
Mm-hmm.
So I kid you not, finally I was so disgusted with it, and I thought, this is crazy. I'm driving myself and the whole household crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I can do something about this. So I went to Home Depot and I bought myself a combination lock for my closet door.
I thought you were going to say you went and just bought everyone socks.
No,
No.
I was tired of buying them socks. They should keep up with their own socks and wash their own freaking socks. And stop taking mine because they won't do their laundry. So I got myself a lock to my closet door that I kept on there for about 10 years until my wife finally said, will you please take that lock off of that door?
Enough is enough.
Enough is
it's
enough.
Just socks.
Yeah.
It's just socks, Lee. That gives me so much life. That gives me so much life. Okay, well, I have a fun question to get us started off today. I'm a big Googler. I'm a big Googler.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, what's the most interesting thing that you've Googled this week?
Well, you set me up to name drop.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So I was recently, this week, I was in Salt Lake City, and I got to meet Ira Glass of This American Life fame, and we got to sit down and talk for an hour. And then we were texting the next day, and he said, oh, so-and-so was in that film we did on Bishop Carlton Pearson.
Nice. And
I thought, I have no idea who Bishop Carlton Pearson is. And so anyway, I looked up Bishop Carlton Pearson, who was this fascinating character in Oklahoma. And
what made him fascinating?
He was a black Christian pastor, and he was drawn to the inclusive nature of the gospel and began speaking out with regard to the LGBTQ community. Mm-hmm. And then he embraced a universalist interpretation of the gospel. And so, which of course, all of that got him in a lot of hot water.
I was going to say, anyway, you don't get much more controversial than all those things.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, so Ira Glass apparently had done a film on the bishop. And so, yeah.
Sick.
Fascinating, yeah.
That's a great Googling.
Yeah. How about you?
Not as deep. My Googling was me cutting my own hair. So I basically
Cutting your own
Googled how to cut your own hair. Because I don't know if you know how expensive haircuts are now.
I do know. Yes, my wife and I discuss it.
Do you pay to go get your hair cut?
I do.
Okay.
But I don't pay as much as my wife does.
Yeah, well, she has more to work with, obviously. And so...
You don't have to put it that way. She has more to work with. You could think of that much more graciously than putting it that way. That's so...
Actually, valid.
That's so matriarchal.
Lee, you were hot take after hot take at the moment, and I'm loving it. I'm eating it up. But I agree. I could have said that differently. That being said, last time I went to go get my hair done was like, I don't know, last year. And the gal did such an amazing job, like definitely way better than I could do. But it was like $230.
What?
And I was like, listen.
My wife
It was also
a deal.
for color, like for dyeing
Oh,
all
okay.
over.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, I'm tired of spending this money. So then I just stopped cutting my hair in general and let it get really long. But then I was like, it's time for me to cut my own hair. So I go on YouTube. I look at this tutorial. It's 10 minutes long. I followed it exactly. And honestly, not that bad.
Not that bad.
I know.
Yeah.
I feel like it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I'll probably keep it curled for a long time because curling it covers a multitude of sins.
Curling covers a multitude of sins.
And then for dyeing it, I just went to Whole Foods, got like a little organic dye. And dyed it myself.
Good for you.
Yeah, and all of that cost me $20.
That's great. Yeah.
So that's on me being not deep like you, like Googling deep stuff, but it is on me being
Google.
frugal.
Yeah.
Go Google.
Google and frugal.
Google
Google frugal.
I love that. And on that note, let's start the show.
Hello friends, Lee Camp here. Last week in Salt Lake City, I met a station manager from a small town who's given her life to serving her community through public radio. Now, because of massive funding cuts, station managers like her are wondering if they may have to turn off the mic for good. Larger stations are slashing budgets too, cutting the very programming that keeps us connected and often inspired. As a podcast listener, you may or may not know that No Small Endeavor is aired weekly on roughly 100 stations throughout the country. And given the current financial crisis for public radio, we at No Small Endeavor want to help. We're extending the time public radio stations can air our show for free, and we are asking you to join us. For as little as $5 a month, you can help keep No Small Endeavor on the air from Anchorage, Alaska to Jacksonville, Florida. Consider making it more, because by doing so, you're helping spread a bit more beauty, truth, and goodness to communities nationwide. Go to nosmallendeavor.com and click Join NSE Plus today. Help keep the airwaves alive with NSE. I can sometimes find it a challenge to get to sleep. I need to make sure to do my bedtime reading, practice a bit of gratitude for the gifts of the day, and then I intentionally relax the muscles in my face. And then it's so exquisitely pleasurable to have our set of Bowl and Branch's signature sheets. They're made free from toxins with the finest 100% organic cotton. They come with a 30-night worry-free guarantee and are ethically crafted by expert artisans that earn fair wages. I loved the way they felt when I pulled them out of the package, and I love the way they feel as I drift off to sleep. So why tarry? Feel the difference an extraordinary night's sleep can make with Bowl and Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bowlandbranch.com/NSE. That's Bowl and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/NSE to save 15% and unlock free shipping. Exclusions apply. So the last 2 weeks have been a blur. A conference in Dallas, a few days back in Nashville, out in Utah, where I got a day to myself to hike in the Wasatch Mountains, then a conference in Salt Lake City, then back to Nashville to tape 5 hours of interviews in the next 2 days. And you know what I've taken with me on those travels, packed in my bags? My cachava. I kid you not. I love my cachava. In the midst of all that craziness, it kept me well nourished, mind and body. And I really do like it so much that I look forward to it. Find myself telling myself, oh, wait, you can have your cachava in about an hour. As you've heard me say before, a serving has 25 grams of 100% plant-based protein, plus 6 grams of fiber, and with every 2 scoops of cachava, you get 85 plus superfoods, nutrients, and plant-based ingredients. No artificial flavors, colors, or sweeteners, non-GMO, no soy, no animal products, no gluten, and no preservatives. So, rethink your definition of fast food. And they just launched a new flavor, strawberry, with real freeze-dried strawberry. You've never tasted strawberry like this. Go to kachava.com and use code NSE for 15% off your next order. That's Kachava, KACHAVA.com, code NSE for 15% off.
Everyone, welcome to the Subtext, where we go beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious. I'm Savannah Locke.
And I'm Lee C. Camp.
Did you see this summer? My favorite movie of the summer was the Superman movie.
You know, I didn't.
Crushing. That's so sad.
Yes.
Have you seen any Superman movie?
I have, yeah.
What's the last one you saw?
Christopher Reeve?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
No, I think I've seen one more, but, you know, I can't ever remember a movie storyline or movie hero. I mean, what's the word I'm looking for?
Superhero?
Movie stars names very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've seen one since Christopher Reeve, but I don't remember which it was.
But all just blends in together.
Yeah.
Well, there have been a lot of good ones since, but this one is definitely a standout to me, and it was a standout in general. It was actually the second biggest movie this summer. So I'm going to do like a postmortem.
Okay.
Isn't that what this called?
Yeah.
It's kind of a dark way of putting it, but that's what we're going to do. So this was behind Lilo and Stitch, which makes sense that Lilo and Stitch, which is like a kid's movie, was the #1 this summer because all of the kids are out of school.
Yeah.
Superman is #2, and it was actually like a more unique take on Superman and just on superheroes in general. So with superheroes in general, it's like they're these invincible people and they're always like able to dominate. And of course, there's like this struggle because otherwise it would be a boring movie. But in this case, he overcame the struggle through his humanity, not through his like superpowers. And so he, at the end of this movie, faces Lex Luthor, who's like the villain of the story, which they even like dealt with that in a different way too, where he had like a lot of humanity inside of him. But there was this like final moment where they're facing each other. And Superman says this: I get scared. I wake up every morning, and despite not knowing what to do, I put one foot in front of the other and I try to make the best choices I can. I screw up all the time, but that is being human, and that is my greatest strength. And so it was this new take. Like that was kind of all of the reviews and all of like the comments on social media and all of that were really like enamored with, oh, you're putting the man back in Superman and really focusing on that like humanity piece of it, which I thought was really beautiful. And there was this response video that I wanted to talk to you about. So this fan did a viral response video where she was in Times Square, like with like the Superman person, like a billboard behind her. And she talks to the director, James Gunn, and she's like, listen, James Gunn, I'm never going to meet you in real life, but I hope this video reaches you. Like, thank you so much for like making this like superhero so human. And these are the comments that I wanted to read to you, and then we can talk about it. A comment said, thank you for showing Superman cry for that single random person he couldn't save, because there was someone he couldn't save and he cried over it. Another commenter said, thank you for not making him hate his biological parents, but instead highlighting his gratitude towards his real parents for raising him. And then there was also a comment that said, this new Superman was a real letdown. He spends the whole film complaining, getting beaten up, and doesn't even fly up to the sun for a power boost. He has to go home and lay in bed. And then when he finally faces Lex Luthor, he has to explain who he is? Seriously? The real Superman doesn't need to do that. Plus, it's ridiculous how affected the Superman is by social media posts. He's supposed to be a strong character, not weak. This film portrays him as a very weak man. Talk to me about all of the response to that and how you feel about it.
Well, I mean, I assume that you clearly prefer the movie line to this last comment.
Personally?
Yeah.
I think that the comments are fascinating. I really enjoyed that Superman was human.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the first kind of question that comes to my mind is, how many superheroes do you know in the old form of superhero? I mean, I don't know any. We don't know any, right?
No.
And so it's like, what does that really do for us?
Mm-hmm,
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And if storytelling is always an exercise in moral formation, which I think it is, then we have to ask, well, what kind of moral formation is occurring in our storytelling? As a matter of fact, I one time went and did a 2 or 3 day story writing workshop with some movie script writer in Times Square, and that was the thing that was so interesting to me, was that he insisted every story that we tell and every movie that we watch is an exercise in moral formation, and it's about character development.
Yeah.
And so you're always asking what's the trajectory and what kind of characters are being formed and how is it forming the watcher and the listener. And so I think in that regard, from what I hear you describing of the new Superman movie, that makes a whole lot more sense from a moral perspective and a character development perspective that actually can do some good for us, that I don't know that the old superhero trope really does a lot of good for us.
Yeah, I love that phrase, that storytelling is moral formation.
Yeah.
And that every story that we interact with when it comes to like movies or television shows or books is forming us.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's so important to recognize. And yeah, maybe that's worth like considering too, like with the contrast between like this Superman movie and previous ones, or just any superhero movie, like from Batman to Iron Man, like the Avengers, all such huge like things at the moment. Like what is that shaping in us, and why is this such a standout and causing some pretty intense reactions?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the answers to these questions, but questions I would be interested in exploring around this kind of stuff is like, back to my question about what does the old superhero trope really do for us?
Yep.
I would ask follow-up questions like, does the old superhero trope lead us to divide the world naively into the good guys and the bad guys, right? Whereas, I mean, clearly, there's a handful of really rotten human beings in the world, sure. Mm-hmm. But most of us are somewhere on a continuum, right? Mm-hmm. And we're all pretty complicated, and we have had complicated backgrounds and experiences. And sometimes some people that do some of the most horrific things have had very, very difficult stories that have led them to those horrific moments in their lives. Yeah. And in my mind, it's better not to judge a person by the worst thing they ever do in their lives, but instead say, how did they get there, right? Yeah. Because there, but for the grace of God, go I. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know that the old Superman trope helps us have that kind of nuanced moral assessment of the world. So that would be one of the things. What kind of way are we thinking about the world? 2, I would wonder if the old superhero trope leads us to a passivity in light of struggle. Well, we need some superhero to come save us, rather than saying, get your own butt out of the chair and do something about it, right? Stop playing the victim and get up and show your own agency in the world, which it sounds like the new Superman in some ways is doing that, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
It's everybody has agency. So how's everybody going to use their agency in the community to fight some sort of thing that's threatening our existence, our shared existence? So those are at least 2 of the kind of really interesting moral questions that I think would be worth a lot of, and I'm sure somebody's written a lot on that, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, the binary piece is huge.
Yeah.
I think in like older storytelling that lacked nuance and like I'm even thinking, this is so random, but thinking of like the Scooby-Doo film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's just like so clear who the bad guys are and who the good guys are.
Right.
And you always know the good guys are going to win. And then life gets much more complicated, like the older that you get.
Yeah.
And it also reminds me of Father Gregory Boyle. He wrote Tattoos of the Heart, and he has this thing called Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles.
One of my favorite No Small Endeavor episodes is with Father Boyle.
He is so brilliant.
Yeah,
but
he's
he
wonderful.
Pushes back a lot because he's working with people who have like killed people and are part of gangs and all of that, and people that others would describe as bad people. And he often pushes against that and says, no, they're not bad people, they're hurting people. And to bring in that level of nuance, though, can make people feel uncomfortable. Because then you also have to face like inside of yourself, the continuum, which is kind of scary. Yeah. But also the savior thing is really fascinating to me as well. Like if there's not some like invincible good person, like superhero that's going to come and save us, and we actually have to participate in something, that's pretty confronting as well, even from like a Christian perspective.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree. I think all of those things are worth a lot of exploring and seeing the ways in which that agency is or is not facilitated by the stories that we tell ourselves. Crucial. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
There's another thing I came across recently. I don't remember what I was preparing for some interview, and I came across this study from the NIH that was looking at moral exemplars. And there's been loads of research done on the way in which exemplars are as important in the moral formation, in our moral formation, especially children's moral formation, as is the rules and principles we teach, right? So there's rules and principles, those are important, but maybe just as important are the exemplars that we give them in stories that form that in kids. But this NIH study that I found, it was 2017, that was so fascinating, was making the case that the ordinary person as moral exemplar is actually more powerful in formation than the extraordinary moral exemplar. And isn't that fascinating? And that seems to speak directly to this kind of stuff, right? If we think, well, I've got to have the superhero kind of guy to set an example for us, it's like, well, how many of us can relate to that, right? Going back to this guy's comment, I mean, how many of us have to go get in bed sometimes, and how many of us have to get out of bed in the morning, put one foot in front of the other in all of our ambiguity? All of us, right? And so if we have a moral exemplar that does go through that kind of stuff and they find a way forward, then that seems like, well, obviously that's going to be more formative of us than some unrelatable, extraordinary example.
Brilliant.
I think it's helpful.
Talk me through, like, when you think of examples of this, even in your life, like, who have been exemplars for you that have formed you?
Well, I think that I have been informed by a lot of, I would say, extraordinary exemplars in the stuff I've read through the years. That being said, it only went so far because I could see that my own life was more pedestrian. You know, I'm a middle class college professor, and so you know, how can I relate to that extraordinary vision? And then it became a sort of, well, no, there's a sort of moderation and a way of moderation, not in terms of compromise, but a moderation in terms of there's space for all of us with whatever walk of life we come from to do some extraordinary things by simply giving ourselves over to some good work, and that we all can do that. And so, you know, paying attention then to, I've had so many extraordinary colleagues through the years, you know. So, for example, one of my dear friends, he's a wonderful, another middle-class professor, right? But he started reading about the way in which the recidivism rate in prisons, people coming out of prison, the recidivism rate was very much related to the opportunities you have for work once you come out of prison. And so he thought, and furthermore, that having some sort of education makes the recidivism rate go down rapidly. And he thought, I'm an educator, I can do something about that. So there are now in Middle Tennessee, both in the men's maximum security prison and the women's maximum security prison here in Middle Tennessee, in both of those schools because of him, because he decided we can do something about that. And so he got people to say, let's do something about this, and started these amazing programs, right? So, and I could just multiply the examples of people who said, this is what I do, this is what I'm good at, and so let me find some way to do what I'm good at in some real social, tangible thing. That's not superhero. It's hard work.
It's human.
It's human, and you just got to go do it. And so I've been blessed to know a lot of people like that.
Yeah, I think what is occurring to me as you're talking, I know a lot about that program too, and how important that is and how much that's really changed people's lives. And that's just like a human thing to do. Like, it's not like a billionaire who's gone and done like this wild thing, but it's like just a human doing something for the good of others. And I guess what's occurring to me in this moment is I couldn't have named that we need those examples. And how important those examples are, and how often we find those examples actually in media. And I think it didn't occur to me that that how much it matters then who the people we are platforming. Like, it matters more than I guess than I could have put language to until we had this conversation.
Yes. And to take seriously, I think the more we can pay attention to and or for whoever has opportunity to platform people, platform folks who are these kinds of exemplars who are doing something constructive in the world, rather than whatever the latest fad or, let me stop there, the latest fad or whatever there is going on.
I could see you wanting to go. I could see you wanting to go, and you use self-restraint.
I use so much self-restraint right there. I'm very proud of myself.
And you should be.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But our heroes matter. And this is something I was talking about a couple of weeks ago with a friend. Like, our heroes also reflect what we value too, like on a broader level. And so I do think that there's something like, I don't know, is mimetic the right word there? But it's like, there's something mimetic about that as well, where it's like, we're platforming heroes that reflect our values, but also our heroes shape the values that we love.
Yes.
And there's like this, like,
that's great,
synergistic energy. Yes. And I think with this Superman movie, I think what's so moving to me about it is that it feels countercultural in some ways, because in some ways right now, the narrative is like invincibility. Like, that is what we are drawn to. We are drawn to dominance. We are drawn to coercion. And there's like this broad movement in that direction. And so this feels countercultural to me, to have a man who, like, once again, a superhero who cried when someone got hurt, and to have like that humanity and that vulnerability be platformed. And there's something really beautiful and moving about that to me that I think
so
is worth noting.
has this gotten a lot of anti-woke kind of criticism?
Okay, I don't know with that specific language, but yeah, I think that the criticism, I spent a lot of time on their social media and just looking through like what people were commenting, and there were a lot of people who were very concerned by what they would call like the feminization of Superman. Yeah, because he was very emotionally intelligent.
Yeah. And what do you make of that? Do you want a Superman who's in touch with his feminine side?
I would want to know, why is crying feminine?
Good, thank you.
That's what I would want to know.
Yeah. It has been so delightful to see more and more listeners like you sign up for NSC Plus. Our growing community is made up of intelligent and thoughtful people looking for a holistic approach to human flourishing. Signing up for NSC Plus is also a way to support the show and the work we're doing, and in fact, we depend upon that kind of support. But in addition to supporting the show, you'll get exclusive access to bonus content, and the No Small Endeavor you've come to love will be completely ad-free. In fact, you won't even hear ads like this one. So go to nosmallendeavor.com and click Join NSC Plus to become a member of our community today. Join for as little as $5 a month. Again, go to nosmallendeavor.com, click on that red button that says Join NSC Plus to become a member today.
New Vitamin Water Zero Sugar Pineapple Passion Fruit is packed with vitamins, just like the amount of peas we packed in that sentence. It's packed like your tote bag, the one you stole from your ex, or your overpriced half a studio apartment, or extra rushed rush hour traffic. Packed like your calendar. Triple booked at 5, of course. Grab a vitamin water. Did we mention it's packed with vitamins?
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just in my take, like, we have so much like language, and I do think sometimes like the lines get crossed where it's like, oh, Superman cries, therefore he's like being feminized. And I'm like, oh gosh, there's so much to untangle there.
Right.
Where it's like, why is crying feminine?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, that's the way I felt for a long time when I would look at the kind of tropes about what's masculine and what's feminine. And I would think, wait a second, then I've got a lot of feminine trends if that's the deal there.
Yeah.
And I would rather think that having some sort of emotional intelligence, or in some cases being sensitive, is actually being human.
Yeah.
Some ways we can be human.
Yeah.
Rather than having to be gender cast that way.
Agreed. Yeah, there's like a lot of gendered stuff in there, which I thought was really fascinating. Because I think, and this is what the whole show for me is about, like what this show for me is about, is saying like, yeah, we see these comments on social media and we'll fly by them so fast, but we need to slow down and say like, okay, what has been shaping these worldviews to be arguing with each other? And how can we unwind some of these assumptions and see, like, is that actually true? Or is that just what we've been shaped to believe?
Right.
And like, if you're a person of faith, like what might like God have to say about that? Or like your tradition and all of that? Because I think sometimes we just move so fast, we're not slowing down to think about what's happening beneath the surface here, that this has become like a cultural war in some ways. Yeah. But it also reminded me to jump into like a Christian world thing. There's this song that came out that basically, and I'm not even going to name the artist, I'm not going to name the song, but this song basically talks about how like God like can't lose. Like it's just like God is invincible, God can't lose. At one point there's literally a lyric that goes like win, 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 win over and over and over again. And it occurred to me too, wow, there's a lot to think about with that too. If you compare that to like yesterday, we was in a co-write and I wrote this song about Philippians 2. Where it's like, Jesus didn't consider equality with God something to be grasped, but took on the nature of a servant and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. And seeing like Philippians 2 with this like win, 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 and how that like feels like a little bit of like an explosion. And that feels very relevant to this conversation to me. How does that feel to you?
For sure it feels relevant to me. I mean, I think that, I've learned a lot from Stanley Hauerwas, as have a lot of us. A lot of people love him, a lot of people hate him.
He's controversial.
He's controversial.
He's a controversial guy.
And I love him. We've gotten to be friends in his old age.
Yeah.
And I think he's a wonderful human being.
Yeah.
But, I remember early in my teaching career, I think I was writing my first book, and I came across this line where he said something like, the cross of Christ frees us from the conceit that we must make things turn out right. And I think that's a line that's worth contemplating a long time. And it obviously relates to all of this, right? Is that when God comes in our midst, this is the Christian proclamation, when God comes in our midst, incarnate, then he loses. And of course, and yet at the same time, it's a sort of unexpected victory, So you've got, for example, in Colossians where it talks about this really fascinating idea that the cross of Christ is a victory over the principalities and powers, because it says he disarmed the principalities and powers through the cross. And it's like, well, what sense does that make? How impossibly? And it goes back to this notion that the ultimate way of victory is through the way of suffering love rather than imposition, domination, oppression, and that by being willing to love in this way, it disarms the powers. And so the cross itself is seen as a victory, but a very different kind of victory than the one that we expect, right? And then, as a lot of theologians have said, resurrection is not so much the victory as it is vindication. Yeah. Right? It's God the Father saying yes to this way of Christ. That this is the way to live, and this is the way to go, and this is the grain of the universe, is this sort of way. Yeah. And so that's a very, it's still talking about victory, but it's a different kind of victory than the one we think you get through the superhero trope, because it's not about vanquishing your enemies as such, as it is embodying the kingdom of God, that is this way of suffering love, and that itself is the victory.
Victory through death, not domination.
Yeah.
And that's why do
or
you
maybe
think that's...
maybe rather than the phrase victory through death, victory through suffering love, even if it leads to death.
Victory through suffering love, even if it leads to death.
Yeah.
That's very Drew Hart of you. Do you know Dr. Hart?
I do know. I've met Drew, yeah.
That was a very Drew Hart amendment. Yes, and I respect that. Yes. Yeah. Victory through suffering love, even if it leads to death, not domination. Yeah. Why do you think that that's so hard for us at the moment?
I mean, who really wants that? I know. Because it does entail the possibility of real suffering, and so nobody, unless you're have some sort of masochism about you, nobody wants that. Which I think it goes back to why that language is so important, right? We don't want to fall prey to some sort of masochism and saying, what I want is to die. You know?
1,000%.
Yeah,
Yes.
or what I want is to suffer.
Yeah.
What I want is to live freely, fully alive
Yeah.
as a loving human being, not afraid of death and not afraid of suffering, but to go pursue directly suffering and death becomes a sort of, I think, morally debased sort of character.
Yeah, because you're exactly right. I'm happy you said that. I grew up like in a super charismatic tradition, and when the Columbine shootings happened or whatever, it became very Christianized in the way where, and now this has been proven to not even be a true story, but where they said like Cassie was asked, "Do you believe in God?" And then when she said yes, and she was killed in her school, and it became this thing where for me growing up, it was like that's the greatest honor of your life is if you're a 17-year-old kid in school and you're like, yes, I believe in God. And I remember growing up being like, that's the highest good of my life is to like want to be martyred or something. And I think that there is something different between that, which for a young child to be thinking that way is obviously damaging. Like that's not a good viewpoint, or in my opinion, not a healthy viewpoint. That is different than saying like, I'm going to live in the way of Christ, which requires me to have what Greg Boyd would call self-sacrificial, enemy embracing love. And if that leads to death, so be it. There's like a difference between the two. Yes.
There's definitely a difference between the two that's very morally significant.
Very morally significant.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about how that plays in our landscape at the moment. What impact would it have in American Christianity should we be confronted with the self-sacrificial Christ?
Yeah, so I mean, so this reminds me of a conversation I had with Russell Moore, and then I read some of it in an article that he written where he talked about when he would go to churches, when he was going to churches and would talk about the Sermon on the Mount, that he was hearing from people afterwards, and they were saying things like, this doesn't work, it's weak, and it's irrelevant, and you got to stop teaching this stuff. And I mean, that should really ring some alarms for us, you know, because it shows that there's this sort of cult of power and cult of invincibility and cult of a particular kind of victory that stands in direct competition with fundamental Christian orthodoxy.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to pay just a whole lot of attention to that. I think it also relates to health and wealth gospel stuff, to which I have this fascinating, I want to interview Joel Osteen someday.
Oh my gosh, Lee, me too. Don't do it for No Small Deborah, do it for the show. Joel, we want you.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely want to talk to Joel Osteen because but let me back up just a second. I mean, I would say at its root to what I've read of health and wealth gospel stuff, it misses the gospel. And it's just fundamentally problematic. At the same time, I read this interesting article one time about Joel Osteen where it was, I don't know, the New York Times or somebody like that had done this long story about Joel Osteen. And they were basically making the case that the reason he's been so successful is that he has appealed to people that have always been so beaten down and didn't have any sort of conception that they could live a good life and that they could do something in the world and, you know, realize good fruit of it, that he tapped into that and said, you're loved, you're a wonderful creature, and you can do some good stuff in the world. And then that's what's happened. And it's like, why can't we have that without the falsehoods of the health and wealth stuff? Because the health and wealth stuff just stands in opposition to the big narrative of Christianity. So let's do away with the health and wealth narrative and recover the Christian narrative, but you can still do this good stuff, at least according to the New York Times, the message that he's doing there. That still can be super helpful. And so that's why I want to talk to Joel Osteen.
I really want to talk to Joel Osteen as well. I'm fascinated with that man. I was just watching an interview with him yesterday. He was at a really big, like a mega church in Miami, and he actually sometimes like hits deep. I'm like, yeah, totally. Where he basically, he feels so optimistic. And I know that is not all that there is. I know that is not even the highest value there is. But there is something that's so hopeful about him that I'm like, yeah, I can see why this is legitimately appealing to like a core part of people, which is that like there's something beautiful inside of me and I have a purpose and maybe God sees me and wants me to do something with my life. And to your point, I think that there's something complicated about him that I think a lot of people write him off initially. And I think that there's something more complicated to the story. So Joel, this is our pitch to you.
That's right, Joel. Come join us.
We weren't going to have guests on this show, but for you.
For you, we'll make an exception.
We'll make an exception.
Yes. Because I mean, one thing that points to is like on the other side of that spectrum is the sort of is the cynic, right? Who can't see any hope, and they think that their gift to the world is always to say why everything's awful and why nothing good can be accomplished because the powers and principalities have the final word, And it's like, well, that's missing the part of the story too, right? Because there is resurrection and there is vindication, and so which is to say there is hope, which is to say that you can anticipate and imagine a beautiful world and then imagine how we can live into that beautiful world, right? And so all of that stuff, and that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons I love narrative theology as such. It's because narrative theology doesn't let you get away with boiling it all down to a couple of phrases or an essence. It's like, no, this is a story. And the story forms us morally, but it forms us to be morally complex human beings who have different things to say at different times based upon whatever's going on in the circumstances around us.
Yeah.
And so I think always looking at the big narrative and trying to understand the narrative well, and always trying to say, what does it mean for us to bear witness to this narrative in this particular cultural context? That's the beautiful, powerful challenge.
Can you just define narrative theology for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah. So the idea there is that when you're trying to, so theology talk about God, right? Talking constructs and ideas about God. But what we have in what narrative theology insists is that you best do theology by telling the story well. And rather than boiling it down to abstract ideas or abstract principles, which still can have their place, right? But that's not the final word, is some abstract rule or abstract principle, but you're looking at the big story and saying, what does it look like for us to be a people that live out of this story?
Yeah.
That's kind of, in brief, the way I would define what narrative theology is.
Which to me connects back to you being in Times Square with that script person saying the story part of, what was the quote? Every story is like forming.
Every story is a instance of moral formation.
Every story is an instance of moral formation. And then thinking about the whole Christian story and the Christ story and even like the stories that we have about ourselves,
right,
that forming us is so relevant to then be critical of what stories are we telling and what stories are we perpetuating.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you go back to where we started, right, with the Superman or the superhero. That superhero story has its given tropes that lead us to certain expectations, certain moral judgments, certain presumptions about the nature of the world. Whereas other stories, like the Christian story, the Buddhist story, the Hindu story, or stories, all of those stories form us in different ways.
Yeah.
And so being attentive to the way they form us in different ways is crucial in this enterprise.
It's really important, yeah. I'm going to hype up your book for a second.
Okay.
So you gave me your books, I don't know, a while ago. And I read one of them. I haven't read the rest of them yet. But Mere Discipleship. And something that was one of my big takeaways that feels relevant to this conversation, which I know that you're paying me to talk about your book at the moment, to pitch it. Just kidding. I didn't prepare.
There you are again, putting me in this false narrative. No, we're not paying you to talk about my book.
Anyone who knows you 1,000,000% knows that that's a joke. But something that I think is a resistance, because going back to this broader question of like kind of why this might be confrontational to some people, like this view of not only like the superhero, but also maybe around like the view of God, like of God being vulnerable and a suffering servant and the Sermon on the Mount, why it is confrontational to us, is because in your book you talk about a reality. So you say a lot that people don't live in accordance with kingdom ethics because it's not realistic. So what's more realistic is to dominate or to coerce or to use violence. And it's by dismissing that like the kingdom of God is not realistic or the way of God is not realistic that we eject ourselves from the conversation altogether and just go along with the pattern of the world. To me, that was a really great way of putting what I think is this tension, which is that a lot of people will say, well, if God is not invincible, or if God doesn't get God's way sometimes, or whatever, like that tension is too much to hold because it's then what? Then what? And it doesn't feel realistic to deal with the implications of that. And so then I think we just want to step back and then go back to the binary because it's just easier for us to handle. So that's my takeaway from your book. What do you think about that?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's
good review.
Yeah, good review. Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that's so problematic about having this sort of vision that God can't lose or God won't allow us to lose if we love God or have faith in God is just that that's going to fall apart so quickly if you just live life, right? And then all of a sudden your faith need be devastated because you believed a false understanding of what this whole thing's about. Because this is simply not the way life works. We know this, right? And so any great, religious tradition, philosophical tradition, regardless of what it is trying to deal with the truth of our existence, with what's really most real. And the Christian proclamation is that what's most real is things are not right.
Yep.
And the way through this is the way of suffering love and trusting in the power of God to help us bear witness to that. And it means you're going to sometimes suffer some devastating loss. And yet that's not the end of the story, and that the story can keep on going. And to me, that's a very compelling, realistic account of the way life is, right? Yeah. It's a question of what's real and what's true. And so, like going back to you talking about kind of the domination systems and so forth, there have been these fascinating studies that have been done to look at political revolution. And so going back to like the 1980s, 70s, and it may be Walter Wink that does a really long survey of all, long survey of this stuff. And he says, if you look at this, what a lot of these people that have studied this, and this is not from a Christian perspective, it's just a kind of sociological, social science perspective, would say that any time a victory was possible over oppressive forces, that it was possible to do it nonviolently, and sometimes it was possible to win nonviolently that you couldn't have won violently.
Yep.
And so it's like, if that's true, and I'm sure a lot of people would argue it's not, but at least there are people that are making the case, not from a religious perspective, but a social science perspective. So if that's true, then, in my mind, it's like, well, here we have another case in which the Christian proclamation is saying something about reality, not some utopian idealism, stupid, ideal world, but the real world.
The real world.
And so I think that's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, Wink also makes the argument through that research that nonviolent revolutions are more sustainable than violent revolutions.
Yeah.
So he says like the only way to make lasting change is actually through nonviolence too. Yeah. Which was pretty compelling as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Like that actually there's like a truer reality than the violence that we live in and the domination that we live in. And that's the invitation of the kingdom of God. But because we're so indoctrinated to believe that there's no other way, then we start calling like Jesus's way unrealistic.
Right.
Like turning the other cheek is unrealistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty confrontational. I think you did a really good job in the book about that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, well, to end, let's do a fun segment.
Okay.
Well, and now I'm scared to ask my question because we've kind of like really pulled the thread at some of these superheroes. Maybe it's not a great question anymore. But my question is, do you have any favorite superheroes or movies? Like, what did you grow up on?
Superheroes or movies? And
I'm not saying you're affirming all the ethics of this superhero or whatever, but just what are the vibes?
Well, I don't remember movie storylines.
Growing up, you weren't just into it at all.
I mean, I would go to the movies and always enjoyed them. Okay. I especially remember liking, This Is the Way It Is some of the most famous movies ever in American history. Who's the professor who goes off on the grand adventures?
Indiana Jones?
Indiana Jones, yeah. I love the Indiana Jones movies.
That's nice. That counts.
Yeah, does that count?
That counts.
Yeah.
That 1,000% counts.
Yeah, but he's not a superhero.
No.
He's a much more relatable.
He's a moral exemplar, though.
Yeah.
He's a good one, more human.
Yeah.
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 I love that I knew what you were talking about, first of all. I was going into my memory bank being like, which one is he talking about? And yes, I think for me, I am so drawn to, do you know Robert Downey Jr.?
You like Robert Downey Jr., huh?
I love
His
that
little
dude.
smart-assy Robert Downey Jr.
It's the fleshly side of me.
Yeah, that's Robert Downey Jr. See, I know a little bit about culture.
I just never stop. That's perfect. He does have a sassy side to him. And after this conversation, once again, I'm going to say, I don't endorse him. That being said, thought that he was a really fun character in Iron Man. And Gwyneth Paltrow was in that movie too, Chris Martin's ex-wife. So that was just a fun movie overall.
Whose ex-wife?
Chris Martin from Coldplay.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that.
Gwyneth, and they have a daughter that goes to Vanderbilt.
Huh, yeah. Yeah, no, I like Gwyneth.
You like Gwyneth?
Uh-huh.
Same. Yeah, she's a vibe.
Yeah.
So that would be mine, but if I had to think more deeply about it now, I might probably change my answer after this conversation. Maybe
the
Wonder
question
Woman.
probably is, if we had a choice between Joel Osteen and Gwyneth Paltrow for a guest, which one would you choose?
Oh my gosh.
Or Robert Downey Jr.
I would still choose Robert, but for this show...
Robert over Joel.
For this show, Joel.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But just for me, Robert.
Yeah, I might
Who would
have
you
to
pick?
choose Gwyneth.
You would? Yeah. We could just have both of them on. Imagine the fun we'd have.
Yes, it would be great fun.
Well done.
That's the sound of the fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron and the quiet confidence of ultra-smooth handling. The elevated interior reminds you this is more than an EV. This is electric performance redefined.